good day. This is Tony Ballinger from the Fighting Men of Rhodesia YouTube series. And today I have on board Jock Hiddleston. Dougal's his real name, nickname Doug, or actually Jock is his nickname. And in our chat before we came online, it appears that we knew each other from about 50 years ago. It's amazing, I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but between the two of us, we teased out this memory of him having a train set at his dad's house in Highlands. And my brother and I used to go along there and play with the trains, and it inspired us to actually get our own train set. So that's a little bit of history going on there. But welcome aboard, Doug, I'll call you, or Jock, actually.
Jock. And, call me Jock. Everybody knows me.
Okay. And yeah, so Jock served in both the police, well, for a short period, and then went into the Air Force as a guard in what do you call it, armored cars to protect the aircraft. So that'll be a story. And yeah, Jock, over to you. Welcome aboard.
Tony, thank you so much. I've watched virtually all the Fighting Men of Rhodesia, and the work that you and Hannes and John do is just fantastic, and so many memories come flooding back.
Amen.
Yeah, my story. I'm not one of these Rambo up at the front fighting terrorist guys, although I did have a bit of a contact, but we'll come to that. I was born in Cape Town in 1952. My parents immigrated up to Rhodesia in April of 58. I started off at Mablerain Junior School, and then my parents moved to Highlands. And I went to Highlands Junior School. And then in 66, in my senior year, I went to Oriel. Now, I know you Churchill boys, well, I think virtually everybody says, oh, Oriel.
We used to thump you.
I know. Yeah, Oriel wasn't the great. In fact, I remember I was forced by the headmaster to play rugby because I did not like rugby. I still don't like rugby. I don't see any point in any ball sport. For me, if it hasn't got an engine and wheels, it's not a sport. But anyway, this one rugby match I had to go to at Cranbourne. We were playing Cranbourne. At half time, we were 50-0 down. And I thought, I can't be bothered. So I got in my car my mom's car, because I had my license then. Got in my mom's car and I went home and enjoyed the rest of my Saturday and weekend. Sunday morning in assembly. The headmaster, a guy called McGrath, took assembly. And at the end, he said, Hiddleston, I want to see you in my office after assembly. Oh. So went to see him. And he said, I believe you abandoned your team. I said, well, if you feel that, sir, that's fine. But we were 50-0 down at halftime and there was no point in carrying on. So I left and went home. No, you abandoned your team. Anyway, I got 3 of the best and I was told, you must play rugby properly. And I said, sir, I don't want to play rugby. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it, which was the wrong thing to say because he apparently had played rugby for Wales. So that was totally the wrong thing. And he really lost the plot. You will play a sport. So I said, all right, sir, I'll play tennis. And the reason why I said tennis is the tennis coach was a cute young teacher called Miss Ireland. And every time she threw the ball up and reached the bat up, the skirt came up. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, we digress. After high school, Oriel, all I'd wanted to do was drive B cars, the highway patrol cars. And so I joined the police force because I've got petrol. I don't have blood. I have petrol in my veins. And so I joined the police force. I was in one squad of 71. And funny enough, I watched a talk which Hannes did yesterday with Les Milne. And yeah, Les and I were in the same intake together. Although I don't think I don't know if people remember me or not, but I vaguely remember Les. And I started my career in the police force. But after a while, I realized this isn't for me. There was so much bullshit in the police force, polishing this and polishing that, and what for, But anyway, and we had our drill sergeants or drill SOs were Mel O'Brien, Mike Lambourne, and Hugh, double barrel surname. Did I make a note of it? No, I didn't.
The dreaded Lambourne, hey?
Yeah, Hugh Ross Kent. That was it, Hugh Ross Kent. And this one morning, we were 6 o'clock standing on parade, waiting for Hugh Ross Kent to take us for our PT. He never arrived. Eventually, we were stood down, and he apparently was found dead on Borrowdale Racecourse. He used to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a run around Borrowdale Racecourse from Morris Depot. He lived in the married quarters on Morris Depot, and he'd get up at stupid o'clock in the morning and go for a run around Borrowdale Racecourse. And he had an embolism and dropped dead. So that was rather sad. It's sad when anybody loses their life. Lambourne ended up taking us, and he took a dislike to me. I don't know why. I'm just going to take my cap off. I don't know why, but he took a dislike to me. I wasn't exactly the strongest guy around. I was tall, but rather gangly and what have you. Anyway, he ended up. We were in the gymnasium at Morris Depot, and I trying to climb up a rope or something, and I just couldn't do it. I just didn't have the upper body strength. So he got hold of me and he turned me upside down, holding onto the rope, and then he swung me. He just pushed me, pooh, and I started to swing. And with the momentum and gravity and lack of strength in my body, I just let go, and and flat on my face, straight eagled on the ground. Luckily, my other squad mates all came and helped me and got me to the sick bay, and I was in the sick bay for about 3 days. But Lambourne got into big cuck about that. He got into big trouble. So that was good. So I carried on with a plan to get out of the police force by failing all my exams and everything, law and police and typing, typing was done by a lady called Annie Lovell. I'm sure a lot of ex-BSAP guys will remember Annie Lovell. And I was just being a bad boy. So eventually I was told I'm going to get back squadded. So I went from 171 squad to 371 squad. And I was told by Ron Trangmar, who was DCI, that if I don't buck up, I'm going to be out. So I smiled to myself and I said, my plan is working. So needless to say, we carried on ducking and diving, and eventually I got discharged as unsuitable for police duties. Didn't cost me a bean, because if memory serves me correctly, it would have cost me about $300 to buy myself out. And in 71, $300 was a huge pot of money. So on the day that I left Morris Depot, you had to go and sort of go before Ron Trangmar and tell him you're going. So I was in my flip-flop shorts and a T-shirt. I put all my katunda in my car. And with Trangmar, when you were outside his office to be presented to him, you had to stand to attention, and then he would hear you, with your feet, as you come to attention, and he'd tell you to come in, and you'd left turn, walk in, stand to attention, and you weren't allowed to look at him. You had to look just above his head, sort of just above where the top of your cap. No, not me. I'm in civvies, I'm out. So I just rocked in and I said, cheers, Trangers, I'm off. Well, I tell you, and as I turned, I sort of caught a glimpse of him, and he just went red. You'll amount to nothing, you bloody wanker. You're this, you're this, you're that. You're just a rubbish. I just said, cheers, and I walked out, and that was it. And from there, I drove straight around to the Air Force headquarters and volunteered to do my national service. They took my name down and everything, and I waited there because I had this feeling that I could go in within a week. This was now June, July 71. And eventually the recruitment guy came to me and said, right, we've got you down. You'll be in intake in 1st of November, 72. So, okay. So now I had to go and find a job. I got a job at Barclays Bank. I can't remember the name of the road. It came down from the avenues. I can't remember the name, but I got a job there and was doing all right. And then I was on foreign exchange. And then one day I made this calculation error, and I gave a customer a hell of a lot more money than what I should have. But this guy was really obviously honest and nice, because he came back that day or the next day and handed back the extra cash. So sort of, instead of giving him, say, $5,000, I gave him like $8,000. And he gave me back the balance. But the accountant had heard about this, and he called me up and proceeded to crap all over me, which I accepted. I'd made the mistake. I didn't mind that. But then he started to question and insult my parents. Sort of, what sort of parents bring up a child who can't, and I lost it. And I hit him. So I went and sat down at my desk and carried on working. He got up off his chair and went to the manager, and about 5 minutes later, I was called into the manager's office and asked, had I hit the accountant? I can't remember his name. And I said, yes, I did. Why? And I said, because he insulted me, which I take, because I made a mistake. I have no problem with that. So, but then he started to insult my parents, and that's where I draw the line. Oh, well, he wants to lay a charge against you of assault. I said, no, fine, you can do that. Because bear in mind, now I'd been in the police for 6 months, so I knew a little bit of law and police and what have you. And I said, I'll counterclaim against him for, I think it's criminal injuria. And the manager sort of sat back and said, oh, wait outside. So I went and stood outside and came out. The accountant apologized. I accepted his apology, went back into the manager, and he said, everything's cleared up, but I think it's best if you resign. So I said, I think so too. So I then resigned, and I got a job at Central Mechanical Equipment Depot down at, where was it? Workington. In the stores there, and that's where I got into my profession of procurement, because I had to look after a little tool store and do all the purchasing of all the consumables for that. During that time, obviously in November I went off to the Air Force, which was an absolute ball. I had such a fantastic time. My squad was the last squad to do 9 months. The squad after us, I can't remember what our squad number was of 72. Our next squad, the next squad after us, they had to do 12 months. So we started doing a little bit of square bashing and what have you. Not a lot, which was great compared to the police. You had to keep stuff fairly clean and what have you, but nothing like the police force. And what our intake was on armored cars, on the Panhard armored cars with the 60mm mortars. Three in a crew, driver, gunner, and commander. And I said straight out, because the Air Force it was a gentleman's force. If you wanted to do something, they would do their best to accommodate you. And I said to I can't remember the guy's name, who was our instructor on the armored cars. I said to him, I want to be a driver. I don't want to be a gunner or a commander. I want to be a driver, because of my passion for motorsport. So he said, oh, I don't know, you're a bit big, because I'm like 6'2", and it was a squash in there, but I proved to him I could do all the maneuvers and everything quite easily. So I became a driver. And all we did basically for the first couple of weeks at Serum was drive the armored cars around, getting used to them, getting to know the mechanicals, because there was a flat four. When I say flat four, 4 cylinders, like a VW motor.
Before we go off that point,
yeah,
can you give us a little bit of the specifics of that armored car? Because you mentioned it was a mortar, but as we discussed offline, it wasn't something you slid down the tube. No. It was breech loaded, and you had a coaxial 303 machine gun, did you?
Correct, okay. Yeah.
And then it was tires, and it had a V-shaped hull, sort of that type of thing.
Correct. Yeah, for going over mines and the explosion. Yeah.
Do you know what round the armor was capable of stopping if you were fired at? It would.
762.
Stop at 762, but probably not anything bigger.
I don't think anything, because I remember before we were actually sent out from Sierra, we went to Nkomo barracks for 2 or 3 days on exercises, and we took an AK-47 and a FN and fired rounds into the side of the armored car. Well, the AK just did nothing. The FN, okay, these weren't armored piercing. I don't think armored piercing had actually come into the war in 72.
Correct. I don't think they had, no.
Yeah, but the FN 762 did make a bit of a, it took the paint off about that size, you know, and that was it.
That's impressive, because once on a rifle range, I shot at a half-inch thick steel falling plate with an FN, and it went through it so easily that it didn't even knock the falling plate over. So
yeah.
For that must have been proper armor plating, right?
No, it was proper armor plating. Yeah. It was, yeah, because I bumped my head a couple of times. It was really sore.
Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, yeah. So towards mid-December, actually, when would it be? About the 23rd, 22nd of December, we were told to report to GTS, Ground Training School, and this warrant officer walks in. And he says, "Right, lads, the shit's hit the fan." Sort of, shit, what's happened? And he told us about the attack on Altina Farm, Mark de Borschgraaf and what have you. He says, "Right, you're all being posted away."
And that was about 1972.
That was 72. It was December 72. As I said, it was around the 21st, 22nd.
Up near Sonoya somewhere, was it? Or in that area?
No, it was Centenary.
Oh, Centenary. Okay.
Centenary, yeah.
Yeah.
So he had a list of all our names and where we were going, and while we were training, it was myself as driver. Our commander in the turret was a guy called Lou Coventry, and my gunner was a guy called Joe D'Souza. Now, we were the quickest team to center on anything, because dear old Lou had a hell of a stutter. So if Lou said, you knew you were going left, or you knew you were going right. So, you know, Joe was on the crank handle, and, you know, we were left or we were right, yeah, which was great. But then Lou had wanted to go to Wankie. So the Air Force, being a gentleman's force, they said, yeah, fine. Off he went to Wankie. And our new commander was a fantastic guy called Bernie, massive guy, redhead, Bernie Taylor. So Bernie, Joe, and I, we just clicked. The three of us just clicked, and we had a great time. Anyway, this list of where we were going, the three of us and another armored car bunch, I can't remember who was in the second armored car, we were sent to Centenary, right into the middle of the cuck. So we all packed our stuff up, and off we went in convoy to Centenary. There was me leading in my armored car. Between us was some poor fellow in a Ford Transit van in the blue Air Force colors, and behind him was the second armored car. It was fine. Off we went and everything. But then I can't remember how far away from Centenary it was, but the road turned to dirt. And the poor guy in the transit van, his eyes were out on stalks like this, because he was sitting so close behind me, to stop the dust getting all over him, and so he could follow in my tracks. Because if he followed in my tracks, he knew he'd be okay if it was a landmine or anything. Anyway, we got to Centenary, we got to the airfield, and we unpacked everything. And I said to the guy in charge of the Jock, I said, where can we get some fuel? Because we were virtually empty. Because those Panods, they were very heavy on fuel. I mean, they were 5 3/4 tons fully loaded. And we were fully loaded. We had all mortars and ammo, and, you know, three of us, we were fully loaded. So we had used up, I can't remember what the fuel barrels, what the fuel tank size of the Panhard was, but we'd used up virtually all our fuel. And he said, yeah, if you drive down 5 or 6 kilometers down the road, there's a petrol station down there. So we get back in the cars, and of course the poor guy in the transit van came with us, and his eyes are still out on stalks, and we drove down. And because the guy at the Jock said this could be quite a hot area, you've got to be wide awake. We had all the hatches down and everything, and Joe was traversing the turret from left to right, and and we're driving along, and next minute there's this almighty bang. So we stop, and of course we're brand new. We're in the operational field for the first time ever. So we just sat in the car and waited, and Joe he was traversing the turret array. He was now doing full 360s in case somebody came behind us. And of course, we had the other armored car behind us as well, but nothing happened. Nothing happened. So okay, so we put into first gear and off we went again. And we could see the garage, and just before the garage, as I started to turn, bang again. Shit, now what? So we drove into the garage, because now we had, and there was a building there to protect us. So we got out of the armored car with, I didn't have an FN. All I had was a 9mm pistol, because I couldn't have an FN in such a confined place. So I had my 9mm pistol, and all ready and waiting and what have you, but nothing happened. So eventually we sort of went back to the vehicles, and guys got in the turret, and I was looking around, and there I see, out of the magazine holder, the belt of ammunition that was cocked and ready into the machine gun had fallen out and had fallen down, and had got between the floor of the armored car and the turret. So as Joe was swinging the turret, it squashed 2 rounds. Good. And those were the bangs. And here we're thinking we've gone over some sort of mine, but because the armored car didn't move at all or anything, we thought, it's an AP mine.
And anyway, those bullets actually discharged inside where you were sitting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned offline that they didn't whiz around; they just got impacted with something.
No, they didn't whiz around the turret at all.
Mm.
And in fact, I found a head of one of the 7.62 rounds just behind my bum on the right-hand side.
That's amazing, because the principle of an anti-tank round, like a high explosive squash head, is that it'll hit the outside, splinters would come off on the inside and whiz around the cab and cut people to shreds. So your bullet just sort of impaled itself. It's American.
No, this wasn't an anti-tank.
I'm just saying that the principle of your bullet whizzing around, and the principle of shrapnel coming off on the inside from an anti-tank round, it was designed to spin around and shred you. So you're very lucky that happened.
Very lucky, yeah. Absolutely. I many years later in South Africa, I became a committed Christian, and I look back on
me too,
on things that happened, and I realized God's hand was on me.
You and I have had a lot of parallels from our talk offline, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happened after the fuel being resupplied? Did you go anywhere from there then?
Yeah, from there we went back to the airfield at Centenary, and then we just started our duties there, our guard duties. At night, we had to be on duty in the armored cars. And
was that static, or did you patrol up and down the runway?
No, we were static.
Okay.
But just before sundown and just before sunup, we did patrol the runway.
Right.
Okay. It was quite funny at night. The first night, Joe had an attack of what became known as the D'Souza Wars. He was convinced that there were terrorists at the perimeter fence, because there were these little flashes of light, and he was convinced that there were terrorists up there and they were getting ready to take us out and what have you. It turned out to be fireflies. So it became known as the D'Souza Wars. Yeah. And after that, we were at Centenary for about a month. Then early January of 73, we were all transferred to Kariba. We went to Kariba, and the guys who were at Kariba came to Centenary. And man, I tell you, what a ball at Kariba. Oh, man, that was absolute bliss there. We started our duties at Kariba. We flew there in a little Cessna. And on the way, we got a radio message that we have to look for something down in the Zambezi Valley. So we were flying, banking left, banking right, and doing circles and what have you, which was fine. I was okay until about an hour or so into the flight. I started to feel, no, I'm not right. I'm not right. But luckily, then the pilot said, no, we give up. We're going onto Kariba. So we flew onto Kariba and landed, and I was fine. Then we started my time at Kariba, which turned out to be 17 weeks at Kariba, and it was an absolute ball we had there.
It must have been fun with the casino and the fishing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from home being the Air Force Base, our other home was the Cutty Sock.
Yeah.
That was great. The guy that owned the Cutty Sock at the time was a guy called Rix Taylor, a real gentleman. Really looked after the Air Force boys. The Army guys were more or less confined to Kariba Heights, but the Air Force guys had free reign to go wherever we wanted, which was really nice.
I often wondered why that was the case. You know, when I was in the Army, we were always restricted, and everybody else just seemed to go and do what they like. It was really annoying.
You brown jobs were hooligans. Us blue jobs were gentlemen.
So what happened after Kariba? Where did you go then? Or did
after Kariba, after 17 weeks at Kariba, during the time at Kariba, we had to do a morning and an evening patrol around the airfield, because in the morning the Viscount landed, and then took off, and then in the evening the reverse happened. The Viscount landed and then took off again. If you remember, one of those Viscounts that took off in the evening, or two of those, they got shot down.
Yeah, I killed my boss in one of those. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I'm surprised.
Oh,
wow. I'm surprised that you went tasked to go further off the end of the runway, because the guys fired the Strellas from about 2 k's beyond.
Coming to that.
Oh, sorry.
Bernie Taylor, the commander, he decided that, as exactly what you say, we should do further patrols. You know, patrol further beyond the thing. But remember, this was 72.
Yeah.
Sorry, 73. Strellas hadn't really come in yet.
Sort of 76,
but we still wanted to make sure. We ended up starting our patrols at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and just driving down Power Lines Road and just driving, which was great, which was fantastic. The patrols got earlier and earlier and earlier, and it was fun. And we always were back in time for when the Viscount landed. So after 17 weeks, we were transferred back to Serum for 4 weeks, and at Serum, nothing special happened. We were on guard duty at the main gate. It was 4 weeks of night guard duty.
Did you have any problems with animals on the runway when planes were trying to land?
No, funny at Kariba, no, and neither at Centenary as well.
It's amazing, that.
Yeah, absolutely. Back at Serum, my car was a Corsair, Ford Corsair, which I had modified slightly, and I'd had the suspension done up and what have you. And one afternoon I was late getting to Serum to start my duties. So I was flying around the ring road. I was really flying. And just before you get to the guard center, there's a long curving right-hander, and then up to the guard center. I went around there. Now, being motorsport, I know what I'm talking about. I went around there in a beautiful 4-wheel drift with my right-hand front wheel off the ground. This was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and people were coming home. Guys from Serum were coming home. And there's this Ford Corsair in a 4-wheel drift with the front wheel bouncing in the air, coming down. And one of the guys, I saw this and they braked. The guy behind him went bang straight into him. And the guy that went into him was the guy from MT. I think his name was Horsburgh. I can't remember. I think it might have been Horsburgh, but I can't say. Anyway, I carried on and went on duty and everything. And then next morning, just before I left, this guy arrives with the funny enough, he had a Corsair as well, and his front was all mangled. He said, "You bastard, look what you did." I said, "I didn't touch your car." He said, "Oh, no, but you came around that corner that the guy in front of me just braked thinking you'd have an accident." I couldn't stop. Yeah. So nothing special happened at Serum in those 4 weeks. And then for the last, I think it was about 4 or 6 weeks, we were sent back to Kariba and just picked up where we had left off, which was great. We had two instances which I will never forget at Kariba in the armored cars. First one, we went on a patrol north of the main road. So we drove towards Zambia. And we were going along this bush path and everything. And Bernie Taylor in the turret, and I'm driving. And he says, "Stop, stop, stop." So I brake. He said, "No, go, go, go." So I accelerated. "Stop, stop, stop." So I just stopped. And I said, "Bernie, make your bloody mind up." He said, "Look to your left." So I looked out the hatch. And honestly, Tony, an arm's length from me was a rhino. This bloody rhino charged us, but he didn't. I would like to have known what would have happened if he hit the armored car, because we were fully loaded.
Yeah.
What would a 3-ton rhino have done to a 5.75-ton armored car?
Yeah.
And this rhino was right here, right by my side, bouncing up and down and snorting, and I ended up with bloody rhino snot all over the side of my armored car. And then he turned around and ran off. So we all said, "Wow!" Hey. Then we turned around and we drove back to the base. And then another occasion, we did another patrol down the Power Lines Road. We went away from Kariba itself. So that would have been sort of going east. And we went down through this riverbed, up the other side, and off we went. And about an hour later, we came back, and that riverbed was flowing. There'd been a storm somewhere, and the water came hurtling down. It was flooded. So I thought, right, I closed my hatch and I accelerated. Joe and Bernie sitting up in the turret there, all, and then they suddenly realized what's happening. I hit this river and the water just came straight up, right over there. They were soaked, but I had my hatch down, so I was fine. Needless to say, I received some swift boots in my side. Yeah, and after that, nothing really special happened at Kariba. We just did our normal patrols and guard duties and what have you. And then went back to Serum, and we were stood down. I went back to Civvy Street. I worked for a company called Field Aircraft Services, and I still had a lot of connections through work with the Air Force, because the Air Force were one of our main customers. We supplied them with a lot of aircraft parts for all the aircraft. And then after, was it 70?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What type of things did you manage to procure, Jock?
Oh, anything really. We had on our books the bin locations of the Ministry of Defence here in England of whatever aircraft part we wanted. So we were buying stuff for the Vampires, for the Hunters, for the Provosts, for the Canberras, and we would place an order through a little office that we had in Joburg at Rand Airport, Germiston, and then they would send that over on their documentation, everything, to a company at Croydon in the UK, or a company in the States for anything, basically for Rhodesia, for the Boeings.
Oh, right.
And we had all the bin locations of everything. So
that easily circumnavigated sanctions, did it?
100%, yeah.
Mm.
And in fact, to go further with that, I was transferred down to the office in Germiston for a year. Well, I was told it'll be initially a year, and I can stay if I want to or come back. I came back to Rhodesia because my dad got cancer, and my car was stolen. So to me, South Africa was a pile of rubbish.
Shame.
yeah, so came back, and of course, because I came back, I got called up again. Went to Mtoko on my first call up, which was fun. We had Salute Scouts fought on camp, and everything we're told, you don't go anywhere near that place. So yeah, okay. And a couple of instances that come to mind is one evening going into Mtoko itself at Mtoko Hotel. It was renowned for the most amazing shelf of booze, behind the bar. It was just an amazing place. And the owner was a guy who wore a toupee. Can't remember what his name was. But we went there, and one of the guys got pretty hammered and wanted a drink. And the owner said no. So he said, well, fine, F you. Took his toupee off and wiped the bar counter with it and stuck it back on his head. Banned. The Air Force were banned. Anyway, so I did that call up. Then back to Civvy Street again. Okay. Yeah. So after finishing call up at Mtoko, back to Civvy Street, and then got continuous call up, which didn't make me very happy, because out of my Air Force squad, I was the only one that was caught on continuous call up, because I'd spent a year in South Africa.
Oh wow!
And I'd missed a call up in that year, so I hadn't done the full duty. So I got caught for continuous call up, and we were called up to Morris Depot again.
Okay.
We were told you're being transferred to the BSAP. And if you don't want to go to the BSAP, that's fine. You don't have to go, but your name will go into the pot, and you could go anywhere. Army, INTAF, wherever. And because I'd been in the police, well, it was a couple of years ago. I thought, yeah, no, that's fine. And I stayed in the police. So we were.
Before you move on from there, Jock, can you? It must have been really exciting being stationed at those military bases. You must have seen large formations of aircraft taking off, and guys getting together on the externals, and it actually must have been quite exciting seeing those.
It was. I remember at Mtoko, helicopters coming and going all the time. One Sunday afternoon, I remember. I don't know if you've ever been somewhere when the hunters are approaching.
No.
They just before they come, there's like a whine.
It's called a blue note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could, it was about 10 or 15 seconds before they suddenly appeared.
Yeah.
So you hear this whine. I didn't know it was called a blue note.
Yeah.
Everybody, hunters, and you're out your bullets and what have you. And these two hunters came flying over the airfield, gave us a really good beat up, and then they circled, and the wheels came down, and we thought, surely they're not going to land. They can't land. The strip's not long enough. First one comes in, and he touches down and takes off.
Brilliant.
Second one lands, touches down, and he scoots along for a bit, then he takes off. But the runway went downhill, and he disappeared from sight. And all you heard was this Hunter engine on full bore. Afterburners, any other burner he had on board was burning, everything. And he got in the air eventually, but he was so low that he set fire to the tops of the trees from the heat, from the jet engine and afterburners. Yeah, that was quite something. That was at Mtoko, and then of course at Kariba, there was helicopters were based there. SAP had Cessnas there. So yeah, and I must tell you one story. It happened at Kariba. Now it's just come to my mind. I was on guard duty, and I don't know what time it was. About 11, 12 o'clock at night. Could hear the radio in the ops room going off. The ops room guy was fast asleep. So I got up and went and saw he was out. I woke him up and I said, "Hey, radio." Oh shit! So he gets up, and it was Salisbury Airport. asking us to light a flare path for one of Jack Malek's DC-7s that was having engine problems over the Congo and Zambia. So,
wow,
in Landy, up and down the runway, lighting flares and everything, and eventually this DC-7 landed.
I'm amazed because that's a big aircraft for that.
That's a big aircraft, yeah.
And Kariba's a terrifying runway to land on with the hills around as well.
Yeah, they had ditched everything that they were bringing back from wherever. They had chucked everything out, so the plane was totally empty and light. So they landed with one engine, and the other three were feathered. They landed, they stopped, and they circled around and came back and parked outside the Air Force camp. And then it must have been about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. A whole lot of vehicles arrived, which were Air Trans-Africa. That's what Jack Malek's company was. Arrived with technicians and everything. And they spent the rest of the day working on this DC-7.
Gee.
And then it was about 5 o'clock. They started all 4 engines up, took it down to the end of the runway, and fired. The engines were working. They obviously went through some test or something like that, and everything was okay. They came back, refueled, and then off they took off. We all stayed. The whole Air Force Base, everybody was standing there watching this plane. Took off towards Kariba. He took off and he banked, and then he banked out over the lake, and he went down below the tree line, and he disappeared. We thought, oh, Sherbet, has he gone in?
He was gaining speed.
Next minute, the DC-7 pops over the tree line. Right over our heads.
Yeah.
Doing the old banking bit, and then off he went to Salisbury. Yeah, and that was that.
And were you ever there? Because Kariba got mortared and rocketed quite a bit. Were you ever there when any of that happened?
No. I'd gone by then.
Okay.
Yeah. They heard I'd gone, so it was safe to rocket and mortar.
Okay, carry on with your story, Jock.
Right. So I then got called in this continual call-up, and we were called up to BSAP at Morris Depot, and we were told, you're now members of the police force. If you don't want to be, that's fine, but your name will go into a pot, and your name will get picked out, and you could go back to the Air Force, you could go to the Army, you could go anywhere. And I said, because I'd been in the police force, I decided I'm okay, I'll stay. So I stayed in the police force, and the guy, I can't remember who it was, but said, I want to volunteer for drivers. My hand went up straight away. So I said, right. He said, so there were 3 or 4 of us that volunteered. So he said, right, tomorrow morning, I want you guys back here for 7 o'clock, and then you're going to take a fleet of Land Rovers down to Vic Falls, down to Fort Vic. Excellent. The rest of the guys, there and then, in vehicles, off to Serum, onto Dax, and down to Rutenga. So the next morning, we grouped at Morris Depot again, got into these landies, and off we drove to Fort Vic. And we were based at Fort Vic for about 2 or 3 days. Then we were told, right, your actual base is now Rutenga. You go down to Rutenga and you'll patrol the railway lines, the railway line from Rutenga down to Bight Bridge. Oh. So that's what we did. We walked, I can't remember for how many weeks it was, that we walked up and down the bloody railway line, which was not fun, but hey, it's a job and we did it. Then we were sent back to Fort Vic. We were told,
sorry, before you leave that, these railway things didn't they put machine guns behind sandbags on like a cart and go up and down as well?
No, not on the Rutenga South Africa line.
Okay.
I think it was on the Rutenga line down to Mozambique.
Okay.
Or maybe even from Rutenga going inland. But not on the Rutenga. It might have happened after I'd left. I don't know. But then after Rutenga, I was based at Fort Vic, and doing convoy duty from Fort Vic down to Bight Bridge and back. which was absolutely fantastic.
And
that was great.
You were a driver or a gunner on the back?
No, I sat on the back.
Sat
on the back. I wanted to drive, but I couldn't. I wasn't allowed, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if they'd heard about my Corsair episode.
For the sake of our international viewers, because civilian convoys were ambushed so often, the police set forward an escort system. It was like Mazda pickups with a machine gun on the back.
Yep.
Which was encased in like circular tubular armor or steel.
And no, that was after me.
Was that after you?
In the beginning, it was the Mazda B1600 pickup.
Right.
With a tube.
Yeah.
And the Browning down the middle, and you stood there.
So you were basically a meat bomb waiting to happen.
Exactly. That's right.
One at the front and one at the back of the convoy?
Three. One at the back, one in the middle, and one at the back.
And you drive at the speed of the slowest vehicle or something like that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. The slowest vehicle was the slowest civilian vehicle was the lead vehicle.
Right.
And off we go.
They took the RPG-7s.
Yeah. Yeah. When we told the guy in the lead car, you flash us when you've reached your max speed. So then we knew, and that's how we did it all the way down to Byte Bridge. Got to Byte Bridge where the amazing ladies that ran the forces canteen fed us and watered us, and really
fantastic women.
Oh, they were brilliant.
I really do want to interview some of them. You know, they were amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'd drive back to Fort Vic again at the speed of the slowest car. We'd get back normally around about 3, 4 o'clock. Sort of refuel the vehicle, check the oil, make sure everything's all right for the next morning, and then that was the end of the day. On one occasion, I remember we left Byte Bridge. We only had about 3 or 4 cars in the convoy. I can't remember what the lead car was, but we sat in the Mazda pickup flat out. Left foot, right foot adjusting the headlight. We were flat out all the way to Fort Vic. So we got back to Fort Vic. Must have been about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, really early, which was great. So yeah.
And then confirm you pulled a hell of a lot of beetles' legs out of your teeth.
Say again?
Confirm you pulled a lot of insects' legs out of your teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, phew, yeah. You'd have a balaclava on, which would give you some sort of protection. Yeah. And then later on, the police issued us with helmets with a visor.
Right.
Yeah, it was all right, yeah. Fantastic. And then after Fort Vic, I reversed. I was based down at Byte Bridge. And then did Byte Bridge, Fort Vic, back to Byte Bridge. While I was down in Byte Bridge, my best buddy was getting married and asked me to be his best man. So I asked the OC if I could go up to Salisbury, and he said no. And I said, well, to hell with you. And I went anyway. But I left my phone number with the guys based there. And I said, if they're looking for me, phone me. I will be back very quickly. So we had the wedding. I was best man. That was on the Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening at his reception, there's a phone call on the hotel's phone for Mr. Hiddleston. So I went and picked it up, and they said, Jock, they're looking for you. You better get back as quick as you can. So I said, okay. I said, I'm not coming down now. I'll be there tomorrow. So early Sunday morning, I got in my car, which was the passion of my life, Alfa Romeo. I had an Alfa 1750 Berliner. Got in my Alfa, and I took off, and I went down to Byte Bridge. And I remember leaving Fort Vic. As you drove out of Fort Vic, there was a huge big baobab tree on the left side of the road, which is where the convoy stopped. And there was always a policeman there. So I drove up to that, and the guy came, he stopped me, and I had my FN with me. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Byte Bridge. I've got a report for duty. So he said, oh, okay. And I drove the whole way from Fort Vic to Byte Bridge with my FN pointing out the window and my foot on the floor. I must have sat there at 180, 200 kilometers an hour the whole way to Byte Bridge. I got there, I parked the car, had my rifle, and I sort of casually walked into the barracks, and I said, I believe you guys are looking for me. And they said, well, who are you? I said, I'm Jock Hiddleston. Oh, yeah, we know, we were wondering where you were. So I said, well, I'm here. Oh, okay. Where have you been? I said, ask no questions and you'll hear no lies. And I winked. So they sort of thought I was with a lady, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, up in Salisbury. And by this time I was married and had a son. So yeah. So after that, I was then based at Triangle, running convoys from Ngundu Halt to Triangle, or Triangle to Ngundu Halt, where they would then pick up the convoys, Fort Vic Bight Bridge convoys.
Terrible.
And while I was there, I contracted hepatitis.
Oh, no.
And I remember waking up when I was feeling really rough, went to the toilet and my pee was red. So I went to the convoy commander and I said, sir, I'm feeling terrible. My pee's red. I'm going to the doctor. He said, yeah, no, fine. So I went to the doc at Triangle, and he took one look at me and tested my pee, and he said, you got hepatitis. I sort of said, great, what's that? I said, no, it's your liver. He said, do you want to stay here in Triangle and go to Triangle Hospital, or do you want to go back to Salisbury? So I said, no, I'm going back to Salisbury. So they organised that day a flight for me on Air Rod from Buffalo Range to Salisbury Airport. And you know, Tony, looking back on that, if I hadn't made the decision to go to Salisbury, I don't think I'd be here now. Because I got so sick that I was eventually put in Wilkins Infectious Diseases Hospital.
Wow.
And just before Christmas, 76, I went into a coma. And on Christmas Day, 1976, there was my doctor, a dietitian, a liver specialist, and the chief medical health officer of Salisbury standing around my bed.
Good grief. And
they said to my brother-in-law, he's got about a 4% chance of living. And as I said, God's had his hand on me all my life. And 2 weeks later, I was fine. I was out of hospital. But I was told, under no circumstances are you to drink any alcohol for 9 months. What a terrible disaster.
Which you ignored totally.
Yeah. So that's what happened. Even sometimes now when I think of what happened and how I pulled through, apparently it turned out because I was in a coma, they'd put a pipe down into my stomach and they were feeding me my medicine through this pipe. And they got it mixed up and they were double dosing me.
Oh.
And I reckon that's why I recovered so quickly. Because, as I said, within 2 weeks, I was up and about and they discharged me. And, the life carried on.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then from that, because I got sick in the police force, I stayed in the police force. I was based at PGHQ.
Right.
In the avenues. I can't remember what I did there. It was a mundane 9-to-5 job. Who knows? I cannot remember what I did at PGHQ. And then I felt better and I went back to Field Aircraft Services. But I did it too soon because after about a month, I started feeling very rubbish again, went to the doctor and I had a relapse. Not that I went back into a coma, but the hepatitis hadn't fully got out of my body. So I went back into
it's a virus. It's a virus, isn't it?
Yeah. So I went back into the police force, back to PGHQ, and and then got better again. This time properly. Went back to fields and got fired. I had sometime in the past, I had forgotten to cancel an order for Air Rhodesia for the Boeing 720 parts. And these parts arrived. and Airrod were able to prove that they had sent a letter or telex. They didn't have fax, they didn't have emails in those days, cancelling the order, and I hadn't done it.
Oh no!
Yeah, so I got fired. But by that time, it was already known that the screws were really being turned on Rhodesia by South Africa.
Sorry, before you go any further, did you know Alan Root at Rhodesia?
Alan Root?
He was in charge of metal plating.
No, I can't say I did.
Okay.
I can't say I did. Can't remember anybody at Airrod.
Yeah. he was an amazing, amazing fellow, that Alan Root. I'll just quickly, he went to America and got a job. I mean, he was a highly qualified metal plater and worked mainly on bowing the legs, you know.
All right, yeah.
And he went to America and they gave him a job sweeping the floor at a bowing place.
Yeah.
And these three guys were looking at a strut and they didn't know how to fix it. So he has this guy sweeping the floor. He said, you go to page 280, second paragraph, and that'll tell you how to plate that thing. And they all looked at him and they couldn't believe it. The next day he was hired as a metal plater or whatever.
The proper, yeah. In his profession, yeah.
Just another Rhodesian story.
Absolutely.
So we're running out of time. Unfortunately, we've only got 8 minutes left. Is there anything else that happened? Did you ever did you ever see any action?
The only action I saw was when I was based at Ngundu Halt.
Right.
We were ambushed on a patrol, but nothing serious happened.
That was on your foot patrol? No,
we were on the back of an RL.
Okay.
And there was just this one shot, bang. Didn't come from the truck. So the guy in charge stood up and said, "Which idiot had it?" Well, he didn't say idiot. He said another word. Had an AD.
Yeah.
And we all said no. And then we suddenly realized that it was in the bush that had an AD. The next minute, all hell broke loose and we were debussed. And it's amazing how your training that you've been drummed into just clicks in.
Mm.
You don't have time to think, shit, the truck's moving at 10 k's an hour and you're still on the back, which is high up. You just, poof, you're off and you're firing. It's just, everything just comes to you automatically. After that, I applied to join the Air Force regular. And at the same time, I went down to South Africa for an interview to see if I could get a job down there. And I came back, and in the same mail delivery was an offer from the Air Force, because I wanted to go in as a first-year sergeant, and they offered me fifth-year corporal. Or South Africa, and I chose South Africa. So, yeah, in 1977, moved my wife and my 2 boys and myself to South Africa. And that was the end of my lovely, precious, never forgotten time in Rhodesia.
Well, Jock, it's going to have to cut you short because we're running out of time on this Zoom session. But that's been a great story, and you know, it just shows our viewers and reminds all of us of the special times we had, the fun that we had,
exactly,
the hard work that we all put in, and that sense of camaraderie that we all hunger for. You know,
absolutely.
It was a wonderful time. Yeah. It's a time in my life that I constantly revisit in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you know,
are we still being recorded?
Yes.
Okay. One thing in the police. One guy in my intake. Was a guy called Henry Bacon.
Okay.
And Henry Bacon was mentioned many talks ago. Real duck and dive merchant from South Africa.
Yeah.
And he was linked somehow to the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, but I don't think it was ever proved. But Henry had a lot of history. He came to the police force as an SA Navy diver.
Right, some really strange characters we
encountered. Absolutely. Yeah.
Jock, it's been a really great talk. It's been quite
pleasure, Tony, and it's lovely
reconnecting with you after so many years.
After all these years, absolutely.
I remember your train set. It's come back more and more in my mind now.
Funny you remember the train set and not the combined car set.
It was your name, Dougal. I remember Dougal, the train set.
Dougal,
Anyway, thank you very much for coming on board, and If you know
Tony,
anybody else that would like to come and have a chat, just persuade them to do so.
I do, but you'd have to contact them, and I don't know if they would be willing to, because apparently they did a lot of.
It's a constant appeal I make in every talk to please come forward, because
they did a lot of naughty stuff, but I don't know if I don't know if they want to talk about.
Well, you can always, so long as it's in line with a military aspect, we can look at
it. Definitely military, but I don't know if they'd want to share what they did. And
sure, a lot of people want to remain private. Okay, Jock, thank you very much again.
Thank you, Tony. Lovely catching up with you.
Okay.
Cheers, man. Bye.